Shall we play a game?
And now, part 2 of Carnival Personnel Sideshow, Arcades.
And then there was Starcade, which was the first video game show that ran from 82 to 83, maybe one more season. I didn't see it, in first run. I didn't have cable until 91, but apparently it ran on TBS from like 82, 83. And G4 more recently in like the early 2000s, before they went away, they would rerun the old Starcade episodes. But Starcade was a big kind of a video game nerd's kind of dream come true, where you'd have two kids, like teenagers, late teens or early 20s, compete head-to-head in their choice of 5 different video games. And it would be, the latest video games, some of which had not been yet released to the public yet, that they would just introduce on Starcade. And I don't know, Robert, you had any memories of that?
No,
show?
I had a lot of memories. I was fortunate enough that back in '84, living down in Virginia, we did have TBS.
Yep.
And I remember Starcade coming on, and it introduced all of us just to so many games. Not only did it give you something to look forward to the new games that you mentioned, Joe, but also it's kind of every kid's dream. Hey, I want to own one of these things. That was the grand prize at the end. And so I think some of the games were selected at random. If I could be misspeaking here, and I think the participants got to pick 1 or 2 on their own, which may have been like their best game.
Right. I think. Well, I watched an episode recently, and it was they had 5 games to choose from. They would spell it out at the beginning, and then the 2 contestants would go head to head in like a trivia question challenge about a certain whatever arcade game. And then if they won, they would win the right to choose whichever game they would compete against with the other player. And then each game had like their own little sets of like benchmarks or rules or whatever. And basically just score as many points as more.
And in a 1-minute time.
Right. You have like a 30-second or 1-minute timer, and then but they would like, it was a really patient show. Like it wasn't as like quick cut as like maybe some of the more modern shows are now.
This is Starcade, TV's first video arcade game show, starring your favorite video games, and some brand new ones being introduced to the public for the first time anywhere. And now, here's your host for Starcade, Jeff Edwards.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome to Starcade. We're backstage today. Our players are warming up for today's big match, and a special match it is. Today, one of these two is going to have an opportunity to win their own video arcade game. So, players, are you ready? All right, let's go play Starcade.
And it's funny too, because you'd sit there and you're basically watching someone play a video game,
right?
And but that was
which has gone out of fashion, by the way. Nobody watches people play video games.
No, but people forget that was common back in the arcades, right? So I mean, whatever the hot game was, or especially I remember Pac-Man. I remember when Pac-Man first came out, and Ms. Pac-Man in particular. Whoever had that, they would line their quarters up on the edge, right? And that was like, and then you put your quarter on and say, I'm like number 10th in queue, or whatever, right? And you would watch and try to learn from the people that they're playing in front of you, hey, what to do, what not to do. But then it was like, oh, now your turn at bat, because these were the hot games, and it was not only fun to watch and learn, but it was kind of like, wow, demand. There's only one game here. It's not like they had 10 Pac-Mans.
But circling back, Robert, when we were talking about the responsibility of like responsible buying and stuff like that, how much time do you get to play on these? And is it a budgeted thing? Do you like, okay, I'm going to limit it to X amount of time, or just whenever?
No, not as much as I'd like is probably the best answer. Again, some days, some weeks, I'll come down here and I'll get a few hours, with them during the course of the week. Other times I won't play them for a week. It's kind of funny that these games actually function better the more that you play them, and if you leave them on, they actually do better. They're actually more likely, the boards and the circuits are actually more likely to have difficulties and challenges.
It warms them up.
It does. And
does it really?
I guess.
That's a thing?
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
So they're meant to be played. And, for me, the beauty of it is the simplicity by today versus today's game standards is, you're sacrificing a little bit, obviously, in terms of graphic quality and bells and whistles today. But most of these games are a joystick and a series of buttons. And, again, you can turn the machine on, you can come down, and you can play a game in 5 minutes. You're not committing yourself to a half an hour. You can play, within a half hour, you can play all 6 or 7 or 8 games And so that to me is great because again, it's flexible. I can come down here if I only have 5 minutes or if I have an hour.
Well, that's what people do on their cell phones now.
Yeah,
like with
right.
mobile gaming.
Yeah.
It's just like they love the simplicity of games like that. Like, the game that was taken off the market for mobile games years ago, Flappy Bird, where the whole point of the game was you were this bird and you would be constantly moving to the right, and all you would have to do is tap to keep the bird afloat. So it would keep dropping down unless you tapped it. And as you tapped it, it would jump up, and you would have to fly between two pipes kind of stacked against each other, on top of each other, with like a little space in between, so that the bird would fly in between the pipes. And that's the whole point of the game. And then that's the most simplistic, would have been like a huge arcade game back in the 80s that became so popular that the developer of that game, Flappy Bird, got freaked out. Like, he was like a one-man show, and he was just like, you know what, this game is becoming too addicting. People are going nuts over it. And he literally, because he felt so guilty that it became so addicting, he pulled it off of
Really?
the yeah. He's like a 20-something-year-old like programmer, and he was just like, this was not meant to be like crack. I do not want to be a crack dealer, and he just pulled it off.
But it's interesting when you say you can come down for 5 minutes. The latest version of Resident Evil, which is fantastic, it takes 15 minutes to get into the game.
Yeah.
Like the open, and there's no cutting past like the
skip sequence.
The skip sequence for the beginning of the game. There's some other places where you can, but you can't fast through any of the scenes. And a little bit of it is learning to use this game's controller somewhat, but truly, the game doesn't start until you've sat there for 15 minutes, and you got to push forward because the person has to walk from point A to point B. And you can walk around and look around, but if you're going to do a speed run, if you want to just get into the meat of the game and start really playing it, the soonest you can do it from point A to point B is 15 minutes before the game really, gets into it.
Yeah, like the home console games now are like cinematic experiences, like the real AAA games. Like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the new Zelda game that came out for the Switch, is a beautiful game. Probably the best Zelda game ever made. I played it for, dozens of hours. I've stopped playing it because it's so engrossing and it takes up so much time, and you could literally spend hundreds of hours playing the game and not beat the game. I mean, you could beat the game in 20 hours or something like that if you just didn't do all the side quests. But like games like Grand Theft Auto and all of those types of games in Legend of Zelda, they're time vampires. I mean, these are special time vampires, the arcades. Like if you want them to be a time vampire, you can. Yeah, they can be. But you can, I can quit whenever I want to, man.
But if you want to just come down, like you're saying, and blow off 5 or 10 minutes, you can.
That's the nice thing. I mean, to your point, even the sports games, and I was a home game sports games guys. The sports games today, it has all the bells and whistles that we wish we had back in the day. Is that, hey, I wish I could draft my own team. I wish I could put it in a league. I wish I could run the playoffs and do the championship and do the quest. But now, I mean, these games are so immersive. They're so realistic, from the weather to the injuries to the play calling. I mean, it's like you're committing yourself to a 3-hour football game. I mean, truly. And it's hard.
And it's super competitive, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you were to play online against people, again, something we wish we had when we were growing up.
Absolutely.
Careful what you wish for, because now it's become like an industry. Esports is becoming a bigger and bigger industry, and it's like being taken more and more seriously and more competitive. And it's good in the sense of that, video games that we have now, they're like legitimate. But I think that now that we're past that mark, it's like, okay, well now games can be, something that can become a person's entire life, like literally, like that's just how they make their money in playing esports. And it becomes, some of these games are too daunting to take on and play. Like you don't want to. You're almost intimidated to play against some of these guys online because do I really want to get shellacked by a 15-year-old?
Well, but on the other hand, you can have this with this because we've all seen King of Kong.
Sure.
Yes.
And I don't know if that is the saddest documentary I've ever seen.
I've rewatched it. It's not sad. There was that one moment where Steve Wiebe was the challenger to Billy Mitchell. All right, here's the plot of King of Kong, in case you haven't seen it. It's a documentary about a man who is a Donkey Kong enthusiast, and he gets his own Donkey Kong Jr. cabinet that he actually has Donkey Kong in it with a Donkey Kong board. So he decides that he's going to, he really enjoys Donkey Kong, and he thinks he could do better than the official score set back in 1982 by a guy named Billy Mitchell. And it was like, I forget what the score was. It was like 500-something thousand points originally. And then, so this guy, Steve Wiebe, decides he's going to beat that. I think he pushes it to like 800,000 and almost, I think he gets to like 1 million at some point. But the sad part that I'm talking about in the movie is that in order to properly document his gameplay, he has to videotape himself playing the game nonstop. And at one point, you hear on the videotape his kid coming down to his garage.
I don't believe this is happening, guys. Wipe your bottom? I will in a second, bud. Okay, bring me some toilet paper, buddy. Derek, I'm gonna get the world record, Derek. Derek, I'm gonna get the world record.
Don't wait!
Derek? Derek! You stop it!
And then you see his like wife, and it's like she wants to be happy when he's getting the score, but at the same time, I mean, he's coming home from work and he's going to the garage.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like, you know, okay, let's extrapolate that out. When you see an Olympic pole vaulter who has spent every waking minutes training 8 hours a day through high school and college for their one shot at this
Moment.
and one bat vault, and there's 8-10 years of everything down the drain. So I mean, I guess it's the same.
Hey, well, I think it's just sort of a cultural thing where, you know, the public views physical excellence and achievements in physical sports and excellence in physical sports above something nerdy like a video game. And then there is a unique skill set to have to master video games, especially like these old retro 80s arcade games. So, you know, there's probably that's probably where the sadness comes in, is that you're looking at it going, you know, he should be spending his time, you know,
being a dad, playing Resident Evil 7. I play Resident Evil with my. Have you, Robert? Like, has like the wife ever gone away for the weekend and like you've come down? Oh, I got a little extra time, and not so much looked up at the clock, but looked up as the sun coming up, and you're like, wait a minute, is it
We've had a
morning?
few of those days. Yeah, you know, it's funny. You come down, and I'll come down here, and you know, a lot of times I like to turn the lights off because I like to have the games and the marquees and the lights that feels more like an arcade, and I'll start playing. But a lot of times, again, the free time you get is after everybody's gone to bed, and so, you know, even on weekends, much less if they're away, I'll find that I'll come down here and say, hey, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I'll start playing a couple of games. Then I'll start, you know, maybe I'll pull one out, tinker with one, play another game, and I'll say, you know, I probably should hit them all. I probably should play them all, and I'll look, and it's 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then you start to see that, you know, daybreak,
the
and
dawn,
you're like, what the hell? I got to get up in 3 hours, right? Or the kids are going to be on me in 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I, you know, obviously I'm not going to be, you know, at my best, but yeah, it does have a way of sneaking up on you.
What is the best year of when the games was 81 the quintessential year?
82.
I'd say
82.
81, 82. Yeah, 82 probably. Atari and Nintendo both came out. They were both going strong then.
Yeah.
Both introducing a lot of games.
It was pre-Crash too.
Yeah, the crash hadn't hit yet. The bubble hadn't burst, if you will, which really was 84, 85, though we still think of 84 as being a great year for gaming.
I guess there's maybe two crashes because
Yeah.
the great video game crash of 1983 had to do more with the home consoles with
Correct.
Atari and the glut of all the shovelware that was available. And then just so many consoles out there, and it was just flooding the market with terrible games. And consumers didn't know, you know, they kind of just threw their hands up in the air and said, you know what, this is enough of the games, you know. And then so that market took a nosedive. So arcades, I don't know how, you know, how that translated to arcades, like if they, you know, if there was a delay in that, or if there was or if that was correlated with the home console video game crash.
Well, Atari is funny. Atari was probably one of the early trendsetters of arcade games, but also the home gaming console. When the home gaming console hit, it hit that side of the business as well. So arcades that came up from Atari were also limited after that point in time. Much of the other Nintendo kind of again started in the arcade, but it hadn't had its home run yet with the Nintendo Entertainment System quite yet. That was more towards the later 80s.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of a lull there for Nintendo, and some of the other bigger games that were also into pinball, like Midway and Williams, etc., had financial difficulties at various points in time, which affected the quality and the type of the gameplay that came out as well. And again, like anything, like any other bubble that you have in the financial markets or the collecting markets, like baseball cards or coins, there was just too many games out, and it was like, wait a minute, hold on, I go to an arcade and where are my favorites? They're not here anymore. The new ones are here, and the new ones were crap, right?
Yeah.
They weren't good. Yeah, I'd say the pinnacle or the peak, if you say, to go into an arcade and play a dedicated arcade, not your local restaurant or bar, was probably 82, 83. That was when the most people, I think, have the most fondest memories.
And when you're talking like the retro game market, are those the games that are most sought after?
Absolutely. They're the hardest. There's some obviously that were made more than others. So, to find a Ms. Pac-Man or a Pac-Man or a Galaga, pretty easy to do. Having said that, if you find one in good shape, that price is pretty solid, right? I mean, now the obscure games are harder to find games because it's just supply and demand. If it had a cult following or if it was a really good game, could drive up the price a lot higher. Case in point, Hubert is one that everybody knows. We talked about it earlier with an arcade on a cartoon. Fun little furry character trying to escape from a snake, right? Case in point, I saw one go up on Craigslist about a year ago. It was posted I responded at face value. The guy wanted $800 for it. I said, I can be there within the hour. Here's $800, done. I responded to it about 15 minutes after he posted. He said, sorry, you're the fifth person.
Wow.
It's already above market. Sorry, it's already sold.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the market for that is just hot.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, what is the arcade convention that you went to, like the Comic-Con for arcade things down in Connecticut?
Recently. So I am a fan of the retro gaming as far as like Nintendo and that, but there's also the same market and fan base kind of overlaps with the arcade enthusiasts. Recently, in the past couple of years, they've done the Retro World Expo, which is down in it was down in Wallingford, Connecticut, at like the Toyota Center or whatever. But this year, it's actually going to be in Hartford at like the Hartford Convention Center. So it's actually getting an upgrade, and it's going to be 2 days, and it's going to have more arcades, and that happens in October. They have these little retro fests, like these little retro conventions pop up around the country, all year round. I mean, well, I shouldn't say all year, but like especially during the summertime. Like there was recently one called Too Many Games, and somewhere in Pennsylvania, and it's just a community that's more, I guess, geared towards the home console market, like where you would buy Nintendo games or Genesis games or that type of stuff. But they also have arcades there as well, and some of them are for auction, but a lot of them are just like free play, just for it's to draw the people in and give people a good time while they're there spending their money on $100 video games that probably aren't worth that much.
A couple years ago, when Tron came out, the sequel to Tron, at Disney in LA where we were, or Anaheim, sorry, they built. They had like a multi-function, like a room that they turn into different things depending on what movie they're promoting. What is the name of the arcade from Tron? I'm blanking on it. But it was the exact replica of it. Wow. You moved in. It was all free play games, but it was like walking into an arcade in '84. It was fantastic. Like, and the music was, of course, nothing was played like after like when the movie originally came out type thing. It was a lot of fun. Did you see the Tron movies? Were you a fan?
I saw the original, but not the follow-ups.
It was really interesting. I thought it was interesting because I liked Tron, the original. Basically, he finds his dad in the world. Okay. He goes back in it. It's definitely. What about Pixel? Did you see Pixel?
I did not see Pixel.
Me neither.
You didn't either, which really surprises me.
I saw bad things about it review-wise. Like, it was just sort of like a cheap kind of nostalgic kind of cash-in, which, by the way,
saying it like it's a bad thing.
I'm not above that. But I don't know. There's something about it. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'll see it someday and get into it. But yeah, I wasn't clamoring for it.
Did you know the premise of it?
No, I don't.
So it was an alien invasion.
Okay.
And this alien race came down in the form of early 80 video games because there was some rocket, there was like a time capsule rocket type thing that they shot out, and some alien race sees it and basically think that this is
Warfare
and how our world works and stuff like that. And it's funny, Kevin James is like the president.
Okay.
And
Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones, he's playing basically a Billy Mitchell character.
yes,
from King of Kong.
It's
Okay.
completely derived from that. And
Actually, now that you're talking about it, I think I remember hearing about this.
Adam Sandler's character, he's like a tech, like installs
He's like
home
a
entertainment
Geek Squad
system.
guy.
Yeah, he's a Geek Squad guy. He is Kevin James's best friend, so he's like, this Geek Squad eking out a living, whose best friend is the president, and he ends up having to teach the military how to play and
combat these aliens in their form.
There's one funny thing because they're playing like it's a real thing. People are are dying, and it's like so. Galaga,
Bring the family.
Galaga is happening,
Right.
and they have these special pixel guns to kind of shoot these things, and then it becomes a problem because he's trying to train him, and he realizes the pattern isn't from the original like '81 release of Galaga; it's from like the '83 re-release of Galaga.
Wow, right. That's right, because it was Galaga 81 and Galaga 83,
Yeah,
right?
there is.
So I mean, and that's one of those things where I'm disappointed in Joe for a lot of reasons.
Right.
Mostly because I know him. But I'm like, oh my God, who would know that? Who would be that much into the minutia that they would get that reference? And it's not just some writer throwing it out there, that it actually has a historical...
The way you make it sound, I probably should see pixels.
It was. Well, and then the funny thing, Dinklage, his character, he was such an awful asshole who was older than Adam Sandler as a kid, and Adam Sandler came in like second place, which is
First loser.
thank you.
Thank you.
And so we see that they have to recruit both of them, and then the guy who actually invented Pac-Man comes to try to talk sense into this pixel Pac-Man that's the size of a small building. Like
Well, he's trying to appeal it to its base emotions, and then chaos ensues. But yeah, it did look like a fun movie. It was super well produced.
It's a big budget thing. If it's on Netflix, great. If it's in the red box, definitely get it. I mean, it's definitely worth it if you're a geek into this era, because like I said, it had the intricacies of, this is why we're not winning. It's the '83 Galaga. Like this is the thing. So it was a lot. That was a lot of fun. What about Wreck-It Ralph? Where do we stand on Wreck-It Ralph?
A lot like Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah, no, it's great. And they're making a sequel.
Is it?
Yep.
And again, I got spoiled because we've lived in LA for so long. When they do a big movie like that come through Disney, love or hate Disney, lots of things to not like about it, but lots of things
The Carnival Personnel podcast is owned and operated by Disney Corporation.
no, just the frozen head of Walt. We're a subsidiary. but they set up an arcade when the Wreck-It Ralph thing came out, and they had the Wreck-It Ralph, game that you could actually the big standing one of these, and the characters and stuff like that. So it was fun when Tron came out. It was fun when Wreck-It Ralph came out. As a kid, am I the only one who wished so badly that Starfighter was a real thing, like the Last Starfighter, that I was going to be so good at Galaga that an alien race was going to need my skills to save the universe?
Right. They made a South Park episode about that. You should check it out.
Were you a fan of that movie, Greg?
I did like the movie. It was a good movie. Classic 80s movie.
And I'm trying to think what else. Am I blanking on any other video game heavy movies?
Ooh.
Oh, gee. I mean, I'm sure there were a couple of stinkers that try to cash in on the craze that are kind of forgettable. Yeah, like nothing jumps to mind, honestly. The Wizard, that's more Nintendo. That was a commercial for Nintendo. But as far as like 80s arcade movies go, I don't know. I can't think of anything else. Well, although I will mention that one of the best Futurama episodes incorporated the same kind of Pixels storyline where they had space aliens come down, and it was Space Invaders, and nobody knew how to defeat these things except for Fry. So he's just like,
all right, it's Saturday night. I have no date, a 2-liter bottle of Shasta, and my all-rush mixtape. Let's rock.
It's time so you can get high on you. Spacey and lazy get by on you.
Yeah, so they put a controller in his hand that combats the aliens, and all you hear is Tom Sawyer playing in the background. So that was memorable to me. But that was like late '90s.
Now, have we exceeded the number of Rush references we can make per podcast?
No,
that's 2.
No, just keep it going.
No,
Let's see how many we can break.
So Robert, you do have all the PS. You don't have a PS4.
I don't have a PS4. I do have a PS3.
PS3. So you got a whole weekend to yourself.
Yeah.
Does the PS3 get plugged in at all?
The PS3 does get plugged in a little bit, only because I do have a couple of the Mortal Kombat games, and I'm into that genre, if you will. With you mentioned the death scenes earlier from Dragon's Lair.
Oh, right.
I think that's where they got the start, but now they have the fatalities in Mortal Kombat. But also, when I was in college, my love of gaming took me to one of the first games that there was in the college arcade. It was a very small college arcade, or near the break room, was MK2.
Yeah.
So I got into MK2, and then unfortunately, I haven't had to be able to get a full-size MK or 2 or 3, though I've looked. But then for PS3, they have, Marvel versus MK. They've got all these kind of cool combinations.
The new one?
So I've got those, and that's what
The Injustice games, which are fantastic game. I'm a big DC guy, DC comic guy. They wrote a fantastic story around it, but it's Mortal Kombat.
It's Mortal Kombat meets Marvel, yeah. Speaking of Mortal Kombat, for the newer generations, the latest iteration of Mortal Kombat XL, hilarious fatalities, like over the top, like bone,
finish him,
bone crunching. Like there's one scene where like a character pulls out another character's head by its spine and then takes a selfie with it. Like,
oh, really?
It's that level of ludicrousness that's what makes you want to keep buying. That's what's funny, because it's like older conventions, but it's just updated technology. It's just the same gameplay, but it's just taken to like the next level with the new consoles. Do you collect any other consoles besides? You have, like we said, the PS3, but any other retro consoles?
I've got I still have my original Atari 2600.
Like the one that you bought.
The one that I bought when I was a kid. And
wow,
it still
and
works
never
great.
got rid
of it. Most of the games I had about 50 games, which is a lot back then. Most of them still work pretty well.
Now, is it the Sears one or the original?
It's the original one, not the Sears.
The VCS with the wood grain.
With the wood grain.
I have one of those too. I found that in box at a Goodwill like five or 6 years ago. Yeah. So, and I have a little bit of an Atari 2600. I'm not going to brag.
Go ahead and brag. But you're not a purist who like emulators are bad.
No, not at all.
You're cheating the man if you don't have the whole thing.
No, not at all. And in fact, again, I think that's one of the appeal of the classic arcade too. You're seeing a lot of people move to like a 60-in-1 board, or they even have some that are 412-in-1 boards. And again, it all depends. I think the nice thing about the emulators is you can build a control panel that has a trackball, that has multiple fire buttons. You can kind of customize it any way you want. Multiple players, whatever you want to do. There's actually technology called JAMA, which is not new by any sense, but allows you to just plug right in if you're JAMA compatible, which I forget the name. It's Japanese animation.
Yeah, I forget what it stands for. Is it JAMMA?
JAMMA. But because again, you can get access to so many more games when you're space constrained and budget constrained, which I think we all are to some degree.
Right.
But certain games lend themselves to it. The Nintendo cabinets don't, but certain cabinets like the Galaga certainly do. And so I could put a 60-in-1 in there and probably get, like Battle of Midway, 1943, the Donkey Kong games, a whole bunch that would be, translate really well to it. Some obscure games too, but probably get 10 to 12 classic games on there that you'd play a lot.
Yeah.
And so, did you say earlier, Robert, that you wanted to have an 80s party theme night and have every listener just
I would love that.
Okay.
Both of you are invited.
Come on over.
But that's great. You got any final thoughts, Dan?
Well, I do want to. I don't know if we can pull this off, and I'll probably edit this out if it doesn't work. But I would like to maybe tape you and Robert having a Galaga-OFF.
Oh, that could be a while.
I don't know how much time you got.
That could be.
I want to see you play Galaga. God damn it!
And do we have Robert? You got any closing thoughts? Or any words to aspiring arcade enthusiasts?
Arcade, just keep playing. Keep your eyes open. There's always bargains out there, and for every budget, every person, no matter what game you like, it's out there. On Craigslist is a great resource. The internet opens it all up. There's auctions all the time. So if you want to get into the hobby, it's easy to do.
One closing thought I guess I have is, these arcades now are starting. I mean, they've already been dying, but there have been the stalwarts that kind of hung around and hung through the ups and downs of the video game industry and the arcade industry. But they're starting to close down too, because you just mentioned that there's a local arcade that's been up forever that had just shut down in April.
Yeah, that's true. There was one up in Pelham, New Hampshire called the Pinball Wizard Arcade. Definitely tilted a little more towards the pinball, but definitely had at least probably 200 to 300 arcade games as well. And they were trying to make it work. It was a labor of love for the owner. They hosted kid party. They dedicated separate rooms, etc. A little tough location, but relatively close to southern New Hampshire, northern Mass. But yeah, they just shut down. They auctioned. They sold off a lot of the games. So the games got dispersed, which is a good thing in some ways, into collectors' hands, I think, and people that care and want these games. At the same time, that experience of going there with a $5 bill in your pocket like you did, Jacques, or $10 and playing for 2 or 3 hours is gone, right? And that was one of the largest arcades, actually in the East Coast. So, there's still a few out there in major markets, Las Vegas, Chicago, the fun spot we talked about up in New Hampshire. And now the barcade is starting to become popular with people our generation, where you're starting to see those that came out of Brooklyn, New York, the barcade, the brand. But you're starting to see other places like Bit Bar in Salem, Mass, that have, maybe 20 to 30 arcades, a bar in the middle, and again, really catering to people in that 30 to 40-year-old, 50-year-old range that, hey, might have, break away and play a game and then have a couple more beers.
Yeah, I mean, there really aren't a lot of spots to go to aside from like a Dave and Buster's, like we talked about. But Dave and Buster's is more of like redemption-based games, and it's newer stuff. But as far as retro gaming goes, it's harder to come by. Luckily, you can emulate this stuff, not on just emulators for your computer that you download for free, but you can legitimately buy for like Xbox One or PS4 or even on Steam. You can buy legitimate, where like the publishers get money for like some of the that was the big thing about emulating, is that you're taking money out of the hands of starving developers, and so if you feel guilty about that, you can still download and buy all these games legitimately over your favorite console of choice. But there's nothing beats standing in front of a Popeye machine
with the other sounds going on around it. I mean literally it is an immersive experience.
It's an immersive experience, and there's something to be said about man versus machine, right? When the thing is as big as you are, you're staring it in the face. It's just the side art, the colors, the immersive experience.
Yeah, and that sideways screen. That's just like that. Yeah, I think I'm going to stay the night, Robert. Sorry, man. You have a new child. And
not a problem. Not a problem.
So, in closing, since we're on a video game sideshow here, my son, who's 17, is a little bit of a musical genius, if I do say so myself. He's also produced a lot of electronic music, and including the soundtrack for an independent game that you can download on Steam. I think it's an open beta right now. It's called Blanco, Blanco. He wrote the soundtrack for it. I won't tell you the staggering amount of money he got paid to do it, but if you want to hear,
brag.
No, right? I'll play a little track at the end of this special so that you can see it, and I'll put a link inside the description as well. But yes, my son Connor, he's a name to look out for in the future of video game music composing. He's the real deal, and check him out. And check out the game. If they make some money on this game, who knows? Maybe my son will get paid.
What's his YouTube page?
Game Boy Advantage.
He rewrites, recomposes, and composes. Is it 16-bit?
Mostly 8-bit. Yeah, mostly 8-bit chiptune kind of music. But he writes original stuff, and he remixes old stuff. And check it out.
It's a lot of fun.
If you like electronic music and you're a nerd and you're like me, check out.
No one's like you.
Nah, goddamn you. Check him out. Game Boy Advantage on YouTube.
Robert, thank you again. Everybody else, remember.
No, I'm not waiting time out.
What?
Because I want to.
Okay.
You didn't give. First of all,
true.
You got to give Robert a chance to say thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And to management who let you have your buddies over to talk games, because we took up the entire afternoon.
Yeah, and I'm going to make this Galaga-OFF happen. You worry, internet.
Buffalo's pride is on the line.
Buffalo doesn't
Put your
have
quarter
any
on the
pride.
pan.
Why? Right.
Yeah.
The Buffalo lost all pride on
Quarter
why
up,
right.
baby. You're going to be on there for quite some time. So again, this is the most important thing I have to reiterate. Do not forget.
Been playing this game since 1982. Took hundreds of thousands of dollars in quarter
got the highest score in Galaga. I got the highest score in Galaga. I got the highest score in Galaga. This might be the greatest moment in